The Bank of Canada has increased its benchmark interest rate by the largest amount in over 20 years in order to try and control inflation, meanwhile also increasing the cost of borrowing. The benchmark interest rate has now gone up by a full percentage point to 2.5%, and this was done back on July 13th. This is the biggest rate hike since 1998. This just goes to show you how nervous the central bank is about inflation in order to try and pull off this monster interest rate hike. Let's get real. How does this impact you? So let's talk about it. In short, the rate that's set by the central bank impacts the rate Canadians get from their lenders. And this will impact your mortgage, and this will also impact things like line of credits. This will also influence the rate that you get on your savings account or your GICs for whether you're looking to invest or whether you're looking to save. For example, TD and RBC both hiked up their own lending rates from 3.7% to 4.7% as soon as this news came out. Rising rates make borrowing more expensive, especially if you have debt with variable rates like variable rate mortgages and lines of credit. This puts so much more extra stress on family budgets, especially if you're already contending with high inflation. In the long run, higher interest rates are supposed to bring inflation right under control. So they're supposed to ease family budgets. Well, that's the theory of it anyways. For some more context around how mortgages work in Canada, a mortgage with a variable rate is a mortgage where the interest rate will go either up or down based on the movements on the Bank of Canada's interest rate. So that means if the Bank of Canada announces an interest rate hike, so does your mortgage go up. If they're cutting rates, well then your mortgage rate goes down. But with this big increase of 1% in their lending rate, that means there's going to be a big jump for those of you who are exposed to variable rate mortgages. That means a big jump in your mortgage. That being said, many variable rate mortgages come with fixed payments. So what that means is that every time you make your mortgage payment, whether it's on a bi-weekly basis or on a monthly basis, the amount you pay doesn't really change. What changes is the amount that the bank applies towards the principal portion. That goes down. The amount that gets applied to the interest portion, that goes up. So that also means that your mortgage balance will be paid off a lot more slowly. It means that you're chipping away at your mortgage more slowly and for a longer period. Now, if you do have a variable rate mortgage with a fixed payment, I want to mention a small caveat here. The bank can actually adjust up your payment required, whether it's on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis. That payment can actually go up if there is a large enough increase in interest rates. But for that to happen, you have to hit what's called the trigger rate, and that trigger rate can vary from lender to lender. For a very long time, it was almost unthinkable, unimaginable that we would actually hit our trigger rates and that it would actually, trigger. But things have changed. We are now in a different market, a different economy. So what I would do, and I would highly recommend, is that if you have a variable rate mortgage with a fixed payment, pick up the phone, call your lender, and ask them what is your trigger rate, so that way you are aware if your payment does go up. So it's always better to plan ahead. So make sure to give your lender a call. Find out what your trigger rate is. Now you might be thinking that rates are going up, my mortgage is going up, things just cost more. I should take a chunk of my savings and put it towards a high interest savings account or lock in some rates on those GICs that I keep hearing about. Well, yes, GICs are starting to look very attractive, but based on the interest rate cycles, we can expect to see interest rates go up. That means we can actually see better GIC rates. So if you can afford to wait, hang on for a bit to see where those rates are going next. Although I wouldn't wait too long if your money is just sitting in your checking account just collecting dust or pennies. Inflation is eating away at your buying power. There's a bit of a tight balancing act. How long do you wait to lock in rates on investment products versus inflation eating away at your buying power? Now, personally speaking, GICs are not for me. I rather invest my money into either dividend-paying stocks or ETFs. And if you're actually interested in what kind of dividend stocks I'm buying based on our current interest rate hikes, our current upcoming recession talks, and our high inflation period, I would highly recommend checking out this video where I'll walk you through my stock picks and what stocks I'm buying, especially dividend stocks. Now, if you have a line of credit, rate hikes are also a problem. That means your payments are also going up. For example, let's say you financed your recent home renovation with a line of credit. Well, be prepared to make larger payments towards your line of credit. And for students, if you have taken on a student line of credit, that means your payments are also going up with these rising interest rates. In summary, servicing your debt has just gotten a lot more expensive. Either you're going to be paying more upfront, or you're going to be paying the same debt just over a longer period because more of your payment is now going towards the interest component rather than the principal. And it's the amount of principal you owe on your mortgage that makes a difference on how and when it gets paid off. There is no doubt that inflation is running high and out of control, and central banks around the world are trying to raise interest rates in order to try and control this inflation. Now, for Canadians, there's not much we can do about our current inflation environment. A lot of it is out of our control. But what we can do is simplify our finances, earn rewards on spending, and take advantage of extra perks that are not offered on debit cards. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, on all levels of spending, whether it's basic necessities like food and transportation or that latest tech gadget, a cashback credit card is going to optimize your finances for spending you're going to do anyways. And it's these little things that make a difference. For example, with the Neo Financial MasterCard, it has an easy to use benefit, cashback on every dollar you spend. And on top of all that cashback, there are no monthly fees, there are no annual fees, which is an amazing win because especially in a period of high inflation, rising interest rates, you want more money in your pocket. The other cool part about this MasterCard and why I like it in particular is that it allows you to track your spending with real-time notifications. Again, another win because it gives you control over your finances by knowing where each dollar goes. You get an average of 5% cashback at Neo partners and a minimum of 1% cashback across your entire monthly spend. There is a ton of value in choosing the right credit card with a good reward system, and that's why I pretty much exclusively use a cashback rewards credit card. Because if I'm going to spend money anyways, whether it's on gas or groceries and other bills, I may as well get some cash back to partially offset my spending. Thanks to Neo Financial for sponsoring today's video. If you are interested in a cashback rewards credit card, make sure to check out the first link in the description below. If you find yourself in a situation that because of these interest rate hikes, because of this high inflation, that more than 50% of your take-home pay is going towards housing, then it is a good time to reassess your budget and look for some savings. And where do you find those savings? The first thing you want to cut is your discretionary spending, which includes things like entertainment and travel, or possibly even eating out. All that fun stuff, sadly. I'm also suspecting that these recent interest rate hikes is going to bust, if they haven't already done so, the home renovation boom. That being said, despite all the belt tightening and all the talks of an upcoming recession, I think people will generally be okay if the labor market holds up. My biggest risk and worry is that we start to see broader layoffs, which means more and more people will lose their jobs in larger quantities. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen, but it doesn't hurt if you prepare yourself today. Another thought is that you might be okay making ends meet. Now, it might be a struggle with these rising housing costs. You might have to cut back and review your budget, but you might be okay. You might be able to just get by. It's going to be rough, not easy, but you might be okay as long as you maintain your job. Now, my worry is that if you have no wiggle room in your budget to save for an emergency fund, you have no wiggle room to aggressively attack your debt, and you're living on a shoestring budget as it is right now, you are going to be in a very vulnerable position if you lose your job. But a lot of this really banks on how many and when people start to lose their jobs, if at all. I found that people really took advantage of low unemployment. They took more employment risks and trying new roles, new industries, new sectors, even retrained to learn new skill set. And companies sort of dug in their heels and they said, we're okay to lose talent rather than pay for existing employees. But that's just regular corporate turnover. Companies are okay losing talent rather than raising salaries for existing employees. So people almost had no choice but to job hop and try to get their salaries higher just to be able to match the cost of living. And I'm pretty sure we're not done with interest rate hikes just yet. Some economists are predicting that we can see another rate hike as high as 75 basis points going up in September. That would take us from 2.5% to 3.25%. Now, taking a step back, all things being equal, a central bank cuts interest rates when they want to stimulate the economy, when they want people to borrow and invest. And they raise interest rates when they want to cool an overheated economy, which is the exact same situation we find ourselves in today. After slashing its interest rate to record lows at the start of the pandemic, the Bank of Canada has now raised its rate 4 times since March as part of an aggressive campaign to fight inflation, which has risen to the highest level not seen since 40 years. And according to the Bank of Canada Governor, Tiff McCullum, the bank has made the decision to front-load its rate hiking campaign because Canadians are getting worried that high inflation is here to stay. And according to the governor, we simply cannot let that happen. As it stands right now, the bank doesn't really expect inflation to come to 3% until somewhere around 2023. And they don't expect inflation to go back to that controllable target 2% range until sometime 2024. Considering the rapid rise of inflation and the cost of living, 2024 seems like a long time away for me. By taking pretty much everyone by storm and surprise by raising its benchmark interest rate by 1% recently, the central bank is leaving nothing to chance. They've pretty much made it loud and clear that the central bank will not stop raising rates dramatically until inflation is conquered. This concept of jacking up rates by a large amount up front in quick succession is known as front loading, so the back end of those raises don't hit us harder. It's like taking off a bandage, do it quick so you feel pain up front, but it's for a short period. And they're also taking the air out of that housing bubble relatively quickly by raising these interest rates aggressively and in quick succession. They're purposely slowing down consumers' ability to spend. They're betting on energy prices declining, and they're betting on the global economy sort of coming to a near halt. What I find really interesting is that the market, the media, social news, we were all expecting, myself included, a 50 basis point increase, or at most a 75 basis point increase. And typically the bank, if they're going to do a large rate hike, they typically hint at this so people aren't sort of caught off guard and there's no really surprises. But this is historic times right now. We're caught in the middle of record high inflation, unemployment is really low, we have housing bubbles worldwide, and interest rates are going up really fast. This is our new reality and we just have to deal with it. Although we're actually quick to forget that the central bank actually cut the interest rate by 75 basis points at the start of the pandemic in tandem with all that money that the federal government is throwing around. So context right here is super important. They can raise interest rates quick and large. They can also cut rates quick and large. That's why right now is not the time to make rash decisions with your finances. All your moves or any moves you make when it comes to your finances need to be just as calculated. It's crazy to think and almost scary at times, but these large wake-up slaps in the face from the central bank are signaling that our economy is in really big trouble. But at the same time, a lot of this trouble is actually the central bank's own making. For more than a year, the Bank of Canada and just other central banks around the world were underestimating inflation. They didn't foresee this sudden surge in commodity pricing, nor did they anticipate this supply shortages or the crazy high cost of just shipping goods worldwide. And when it comes to the Canadian economy, they didn't expect us to bounce back so quickly from this recession from the pandemic. And let's not forget, they certainly did not see the crazy rise in housing prices because of that pandemic either. And in fact, taking a trip down memory lane, just as the start of the pandemic, the Bank of Canada was expecting housing prices to decline about like 18% or 20%. But to be fair, no one really has a crystal ball, so can you really blame the central bank? Well, let me know in the comments. Can you blame the central bank, or it's because no one has a crystal ball, so we can just do the best we can to manage? I want to hear from you. Now, the other thing is that our collective obsession with housing was the force that really picked us up out of the pandemic-induced recession. Now it's that same force that's going to drag us right back down to earth, with, of course, a big push from the central bank. Households seeking to renew or take on new mortgages are seeing 5-year fixed rates that have not been seen since the days of 2010. We're at the highest level of these mortgages in over 10 years. As sad as it may be, it's the price that Canadians are having to pay for letting the Bank of Canada overheat our economy for as long as they did recently. They wanted this labor market to grow as much as possible, to grow as quickly as possible. And now, I have a feeling we're going to pay a price for that overheating economy. And now to reestablish its credibility, the Bank of Canada is raising its interest rates again and again and promising to do even more, even though some economists are warning that they're already behind the slowdown curve. The same forces that are cooling the national housing market is the exact same force that's causing an overheating in the rental market. Rents have gone through the roof, and this is a problem, especially if you're the Bank of Canada trying to control inflation. Rents are just bluntly out of control. They're skyrocketing, and it's just not getting enough coverage in the media. So you want to make sure that you stay tuned to this channel for all your updates that you may not get from the regular media. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and thanks button. The bottom line is that our housing market has already cracked because of the rapidly rising rates that our central bank has put out, which only goes to show you and should reinforce that concept just how insane our housing market was. You couldn't really expect for our housing prices to go up by 20% year over year or see 10% gains month over month. You were expecting that to continue for the foreseeable future. You're out of touch with reality, plain and simple. And with this 100 basis points rate hike we just saw, this is going to set us up for even a deeper correction in the housing market. Buyers are now just waiting to see on the sidelines how much purchasing power can they lose with each successive rate hike. And they've also pretty much stopped putting offers on houses because we're forecasting even more price cuts, even more interest rate hikes. The question is, where do we go from here? Well, to answer that, that's the topic of my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you had some meaningful takeaways from this video. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and thanks button. And don't forget to check out Neo Financial's MasterCard, easy cashback, and some amazing perks. All the details you need are in the description below, and I'll talk to you in the comments section.